What's up guys, it's Alex here, your friendly reef dork. Now when you're setting up your first marine aquarium, there is a ton of information and it's difficult to know what you have to do and what you don't have to do. But some of these things are really important, so today I'm going to run through what I think are the 5 best bits of advice that beginners tend to ignore. Now it's really tempting to avoid some of the things on this list, so see how many you think you can stick to. First up, if you're new to the channel, I put out a video every week with tips on how to set up and maintain an awesome reef tank. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on anything. Right, let's get stuck in. The first great advice beginners ignore is buying an aquarium cover. Now there is no doubt that tanks look better without a cover, and the way a tank looks is important, so it's understandable that many new reefers choose not to cover their tanks. But you quickly stop noticing a cover once you've got one, and the reality is that an uncovered tank is a ticking time bomb. Pretty much all commonly kept fish jump, and beginner favourites like clownfish, gobies and blennies love nothing more than emulating Free Willy. I didn't have a cover on my first tank, and I came home one day to find my goby carpet surfing, and one of my clownfish even jumped out twice, fortunately while I was in the living room and on hand to save him. Now if you want to convince yourself, you'll be able to find people online who've had luck with fish not jumping, but for every success story there are 10 failures, and this simply isn't a case of if, it's a case of when. It really is gutting losing a fish when it was your fault, and if you have kids, just think about what it'll be like if they were to walk in and find a crispy Nemo on your living room floor. Next up is not buying second-hand kit. This is an expensive hobby and it's really common for people to give up after a year or so, either because of time constraints or because people run into problems that suck the fun out of the hobby. And you're likely to lose at least half of the money you spend if you've bought shiny new kit. When you're starting out, it's understandable to want to buy everything new. It takes away the risk of something going wrong, it means you can have a fun spending spree in a shop, and many second-hand tanks are advertised for sale uncleaned, which is immediately off-putting. Even if you don't drop out within the first year, you're likely to want to upgrade when you've learnt a bit more, so one way or the other, you're likely to lose a lot of cash when you sell up. And simply buying new equipment doesn't make any difference to how successful your tank will be. The effort and enthusiasm you put in are much bigger factors in your success. Even if you have the budget for it, you're far better off spending the money on amazing livestock for your new reef. And while cleaning an old tank is a bit of a chore, you can actually make it very easy. Just fill it with water, then add a load of vinegar or citric acid crystals. The dirt will then fall off, leaving you with a good as new tank for half the money or even less. The only caveat to this is that I'd avoid buying a cabinet with any significant water damage. It just looks awful and it won't brush out. Number 3 on my list of the best advice beginners ignore is to research every livestock purchase. Saltwater fish, inverts and corals are just so damn awesome that it's sometimes impossible to resist making an impulse buy. But the cutest fish can often be the most aggressive, and bottle top sized fish can grow to over a foot long. Accidentally buying an aggressive fish, coral or invert can ruin your enjoyment of the tank and make the whole experience stressful rather than relaxing. And while best practice is to read a few articles, watch a few videos and ask for people's experiences, a quick Google search while in the shop will probably prevent 90% of disasters. LiveAquaria.com is a great website to check in on. It tells you whether a fish is aggressive, will eat corals or grow too big for your tank. And you should never simply rely on what your local fish shop says. Most won't give you bad advice, but some will, and even with the good ones, you're much better off relying on your own research, as you will know what size your tank is, what other livestock you have, and other factors that will influence your decision. And this is a really important one to stick to as you grow in the hobby. It's easy to assume, for example, that all wrasses are peaceful until you buy a 6-line wrasse that turns out to be the devil. Next up is a big one, buying too many fish. One of the questions I get asked most over on Instagram is how many more fish can I buy? And after I ask how many fish you already have, my answer is often, you've already got too many. Now with proper planning, the right filtration and careful selection of tank mates, it absolutely is possible to have a heavily stocked fish tank. But in your early days, it's really important to err on the side of caution. While corals are usually the stars of the show for most reef tanks, fish are often what gets the most attention, particularly in the early days. And that can lead to overstocking, which in turn will lead to algae problems. And if algae takes over, it can be an absolute nightmare to get rid of. And I wouldn't mind betting that, along with an outbreak of fish parasites, out of control algae is the biggest cause of people shutting down their tanks and abandoning the hobby altogether. Knowing how many fish you can keep isn't easy, but the best answer is to take it slowly and build up one at a time, making sure your tank has enough space and filtration capacity to handle the extra fish. And stocking fish is very much like drinking beer. It's far better to have two too few than one too many. And directly related to that is the very best advice beginners ignore: take it slowly. Keeping a reef tank is very much like having a poo. If you push too hard, it'll end in a bloody mess. New tanks take time to bed in as they go through various stages, and most tanks take a good 6 months to a year to become fully established. Adding too many fish too quickly will upset the balance in your tank, cause algae outbreaks, and will actually slow you down in the long term. And adding corals too soon can be just as bad. Corals just don't like new tanks and can fade away and die in no time if your tank isn't ready. And beyond that, graduating to stony corals too soon can cause you further problems. Stony corals use up elements like calcium and alkalinity in your tank. If you haven't tested those levels, it's a toss of the coin as to whether they'll survive, and if they do, they will immediately begin to deplete the elements in your water, which, if left unchecked, can crash your tank and wipe out all of your corals. Saltwater aquariums make terrible short-term projects, and the very best tanks are born out of patience more than anything else. So if you only take one thing from this video, it should be that nothing good happens quickly in a reef tank. Now, if you've already started your reefing journey, let me know in the comments section which of these you ignored. I personally ignored all of them, but my reefing journey would have been that much better had I not done so. If you enjoyed the video then, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next week, and until next time, happy reefing.